Welcome to episode number 63 of Hoop Talk Fanatics. I am here with John Walker, recapping a big showdown that happened last night in Stores, Connecticut, and I'm anxious to hear what his thoughts were on the game and everything else. So welcome.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for being accommodating. I've had a wacky schedule this week, so I'm glad that we could figure something out and make it happen.
So my first question is, what were your thoughts on how Creighton came into Connecticut and performed?
Yeah, I thought it was probably a little bit I don't think we saw who Creighton would like to be in Stores. That's certainly, I think the best way I've kind of described it is I don't think I expected. I've got a rambunctious cat in the back, so he might chime in here and there. But I don't think I expected UConn to defend at the level that they had. I watched a little bit of UConn. Not every game. I'd be lying if I said I have watched every game. But I don't think they have defended a team like that for 40 minutes. UConn.
Mhm.
And I don't think Creighton has played a team that's defended them like that for 48 minutes. They kind of had an interesting loss to Colorado State back like the day before Thanksgiving. You could maybe argue that. But I mean, UConn just kind of the word I keep coming back to is like mugged. I just
Yeah.
I don't think I certainly didn't expect UConn to defend at that high of a level. Um, and it for sure threw off Creighton's free flowing offense, if you will. They want to get defensive rebounds, they want to kick it, they want to run in transition, and they want to score quick before the other team can get their defense set. And UConn kind of limited every aspect of that. And really for 40 minutes, which is something that I don't think I've seen happen against Creighton this year.
I know that uh Creighton had definitely had trouble guarding Tristan Ewing. He was the
Yeah.
biggest factor of the UConn's offense last night. He had 16 points with 6 for 15 from the field, and I just think that this UConn team is definitely special this year, and I
Yeah.
think they can definitely make noise down the road with a potential like deep run in the tournament. And what were your thoughts on how Kalkbrenner and Shireman performed?
Yeah. I think that's interesting that you say that. I kind of mentioned it in my story last night. I think UConn,
Hmm.
especially especially against Creighton, I really think UConn looked like a team that was hungry and hunting for another national championship.
Hmm.
If UConn plays like that, there aren't going to be, they had just gotten Donovan Clingan back. He played, I think, 16 minutes, didn't have a massive impact on the game compared to what we're kind of used to seeing from him. Hadn't played in, nearly a month. So, if they get back in the stride of things and they stay healthy, which is, kind of a big thing in the Big East this year, um, then yeah, I really think they're probably going to be one of the teams that's going to, end up in Phoenix, which is where the Final Four is this year, or at least be a shoe in for the second weekend
Hmm.
of the tournament. But Baylor Shireman, going back to the second part, Baylor Shireman and Ryan Kalkbrenner, I don't think Creighton utilized Ryan Kalkbrenner enough, which maybe sounds weird, trying to get different ways to score because Samson Johnson had a good game last night and Donovan Clingan was back. And so maybe the number one priority was not let's feed it into Ryan Kalkbrenner. Um, but it seemed like out of the gates, it was the priority.
Hmm.
And UConn, going back to their defense, did such a good job at taking away all of Creighton's pick and rolls That's what I was most impressed with about Samson Johnson, his ability to step out to the perimeter and then get back and take away, an overhead lob to Ryan Kalkbrenner.
Mhm.
That's what I was most impressed about. And yeah, Ryan Kalkbrenner's first paint touch of the second half, I don't believe, didn't come until like 8 minutes left in the game.
Mhm.
That's not the recipe for success for Creighton. They want to be able to get it into their big guy because it forces the defense to suck in, and then they can kick and have open looks and pass the ball. That's kind of the basis of their offense. And I again just thought UConn defended the mess out of them to the point where it was going to be hard for the Jays to overcome, and it was.
Mhm. So coming off this loss, what do you think uh the matchup will be like for Creighton against a good Seton Hall team?
Yeah, I actually haven't dove in. I usually take a deep dive into each opponent, especially I'm kind of new to the beat. I just joined in November, so I was covering Oklahoma State before this, and so I'm kind of new to the Big East. I'm new to Creighton, and so I this season I really made it a point of emphasis to take a deep dive into each opponent, just so I kind of have a feel for things. And I haven't done that with Seton Hall yet. I will do that tomorrow. But
Mhm.
I've watched a little bit of them on TV. I believe Kaderi Richmond is the driving force on the Seton Hall team. Now it's
Mhm.
got a little bit of Shaheen Holloway identity to it, obviously. So they're going to
Yeah.
drop down in a stance and try and defend and not let you get out in transition. Welcome to the Big East, right?
Yeah.
But they have go-to scorers. And so that'll be the thing for me is Creighton's defensive efficiency got better after they lost to UConn, which is so weird
Mhm.
to say. But their defense in a 14-point loss got better metrically, and their offense, kind of plummeted from where it was a week ago. But can Creighton's done such a good job at taking away the other team's best score. We talked about Tristan Newton. He was only 6 for 15 on most nights. That probably doesn't work out for UConn, right? But it does
Mhm.
because they're so star-studded. But I don't know if 1 through 5 Seton Hall necessarily has the talent UConn does. And so I think it'll be a more even matchup for the Jays. But the key for it is shutting down Kaderi Richmond and hitting a few threes to open the game up and let the offense become what it is, what it's supposed to be, and kind of everything that it wasn't against UConn.
Mhm. Uh, what are your thoughts on once the Big East Conference tournament comes around? Do you see Creighton being a deep opponent in it, or do you think that it's off, uh, like off and on, up and down?
Yeah, yeah, it's probably a little bit of the latter. They're probably two a little up and down at the moment.
Hmm.
Um, I think they, outside of Ryan Kalkbrenner and a couple of Baylor Shireman drives a game, they probably need to get a little bit more pressure on the rim.
Hmm.
Trey Alexander is really good at getting to that mid-range spot and pulling up out of nowhere and hitting it. Baylor Shireman's going to drive a couple of times, and they're going to try and put it up top, let Kalkbrenner go get it and lay it in. Um, but I think we saw a little bit over the past couple of weeks that Stephen
Hmm.
Ashworth can finish around the rim, maybe better than some people think. So maybe put him in some more situations, kind of um, establish an identity that works on offense when the shots aren't falling and you can't rely on Ryan Kalkbrenner. Now, that's obviously really tough because those two things are kind of what this team's built on.
Hmm.
Um, but I think their defense is going to be able to keep them in any game from now until March. I really do, because they're sixth in defensive efficiency now. They're one of the best defensive units in the country. That's going to keep you in most games, I think. from
Mhm.
my experience. That's going to keep you in most games. So I like the chances. In terms of the Big East tournament, it's going to be tough this year because I think before the year we could say, oh, it was going to be UConn, um, Creighton, and Marquette that got the first round buys in New York, and now teams are going to have to, and Creighton included, teams are going to have to fight for those buys. Seton Hall's up there, obviously. St. John's is storming. Villanova's lingering around. Marquette is not where they want to be right now. I'm sure they won't be at the bottom of the pack for long. So yeah, it's going to be a dogfight once we get to New York.
Mhm.
I could see Creighton making it to at least the semifinals. I think anything other than that, would probably be a disappointment in their eyes.
Mhm.
And probably mine too, just because I think at the end of the day, they are one of the best four teams in the conference, without a doubt. Um, but man, the Big East has just beaten the crap out of each other this year. So we'll see how everything plays out. It'll be fun. When we get to New York, in the what month and a half that we have until then, that'll be fun too.
I like every time I get the chance to talk to a reporter like you from different teams, I like
Hmm.
to hear about their perspective on my team that I follow closely, which is Villanova. And do you think that Villanova has the same type of identity that Creighton has and can make a bigger run, or do you think that they have the same issues that Creighton has?
Yeah. Well, so I kind of speak when I guess I'll start here. The funny again, I'm new to the beat, I'm new to the
Yeah.
area, new to the Big East, and so before they opened conference play, Creighton and Villanova against each other
Hmm.
here in Omaha, people were like, Eric Dixon's going to have 30, and I was like, you just you just know that, and they were like, yeah, he has 30 every time he plays us, and I was like, okay. I was just like, okay, like that's odd. And sure enough, as as people here in Omaha now know, Eric Dixon popped off that night, hit the game winner in overtime, and it was just nuts. I think that they lack that true third option.
Hmm.
Um, I which kind of sounds weird with this Villanova team, but yeah, I really think they're kind of the same way. They're going to anchor down on defense, which seems like most of the Big East is kind of that way, is
Hmm.
going to be that way. They're going to play a really tough brand of defense, if the team, Creighton, for example, a team that isn't going to be in your grill all game, they're going to play perhaps the most fundamentally sound defense you'll play against all year. They don't force you into a lot of turnovers, but they don't foul. So they're really fundamentally sound, and they just don't take those turnover chances that'll get themselves beat. I kind of think that's a little bit of Nova's defensive situation too, but I would love to see them have kind of that true third option on offense to feel really comfortable about them on a nightly basis. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's Villanova.
Hmm.
They're going to make some noise. I think Creighton coach Greg McDermott had said like one, obviously Georgetown and DePaul, they're struggling this year. Those two teams will probably finish last. But Greg McDermott said like somebody's going to have to finish 8 or 9.
Hmm.
That's the crazy thing in all of this. Um, Maybe Seton Hall falls all the way down. Maybe they hit a rough stretch. Maybe Villanova goes up top. Maybe Creighton finishes second. Maybe Creighton falls. There's just no telling what happens in the Big East. But I like Villanova. I think they're a good team. I think they should get into the tournament, and if they do, they'll obviously make a little bit of noise. Um, but we'll see. We got a long ways to go until then.
Uh, like once the big dance comes around, how many games do you think Villanova can win and be the front tier of the conference?
Yeah. Um, Man, it would really just depend because March is kind of all about the draw that you get.
Yeah.
Um, and you always have that like one pesky mid-major that'll get matched up as a,
Hmm.
in a 7-12 or a what would it be, 7-10 matchup, or a
Yeah.
6-11 matchup, and they just upset everyone. So I would hate to see Villanova get in a situation like that, but I think they at least win a game. A
Hmm.
game. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know. It'd be tough. I think it'd be tough to see them in the second weekend, but I do think they are a lock for a game in the tournament, draw depending. But
Hmm.
I kind of like Villanova's makeup. I just, I would for sure say they're in the second weekend if they had that true third option. Um, but who knows? Once you get in, that's why everyone loves March. Once you get into it, there's no
Yeah.
predicting what's going to happen.
Before we end, I just wanted your take on this weekend showdown in South Philadelphia between UConn and Villanova.
It's gonna be a good one. It's gonna be a good one. I will again. I just think UConn is one of the best teams in the country.
Hmm.
They're obviously the number one team in the country. They won 5 in a row without Donovan Clingan. He's back in a I guess limited capacity might be right,
Hmm.
but he's back. He'll start ramping up. Dan Hurley had said that if he didn't play against Creighton, he was for sure playing against Villanova. So like that's just to kind of put perspective in how close or how far along he is in his return. Um, but that's going to be another slugfest.
Hmm.
Another good old fashioned Big East slugfest.
Yeah.
I think Villanova will. I think UConn probably wins. Um, Man, I'm not sure. I have no idea. It'll be a good one. I don't know how that one's gonna play out. I think UConn will win. Um, but I had a firsthand account of Villanova kind of being knocked out of a game, and when they played Creighton here to open conference play, clawed their way
Hmm.
back in, really started on the defensive end. And then Eric Dixon got hot and they clawed their way back in and forced overtime and gutted it out in overtime. So, Villanova's kind of got that dog mentality, if you will. They'll reach down in and pull a game out. And we've seen in the Big East that anybody could beat anybody. So I guess I'd say I'd take UConn.
Hmm.
But if Villanova kept it close for a little bit or wire to wire, I wouldn't really be surprised either.
I'm hoping it's like the Creighton Villanova game a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. No, and that was a good game. I know people in
Yeah.
Omaha probably aren't too happy about it. Um, but all things considered, it was a good game. I think it was pretty telling that the Jays and Villanova, I guess, kind of opened
Hmm.
Big East play with that, because games like that are really all we've seen in the Big East so far.
Yeah.
So
I'm really anxious to see the Cam Spencer Justin Moore matchup.
yeah, that'll be fun. Cam Spencer, I was surprised again. I watch a little bit of UConn. I try and do a little bit of film before each game, especially since I'm new.
Hmm.
Um, and I was so surprised at the pace that Cam Spencer played at. Never sped up, but he was never slowed down. Like it was perfectly in motion all the
Hmm.
time, in stride all of the time. Knew where he wanted to go, knew where he needed to be, knew where he could get to his shots. It was just that was pretty impressive to me. But if anybody's going to take him away, Justin Moore's got a pretty good chance to do it.
Yeah. Uh, Thank you so much for taking the time to come on,
Of
and
course.
I'll definitely be in touch with you throughout the rest of the season, and definitely have you on to maybe preview the conference tournament.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.